was told by our business mentor. He literally said, "You're gonna have to put a bullet in it."
Oh, God, stab me in the heart. Today's guest on the Powerhouse Diaries shows us that when your mission is big enough, giving up is just not an option, no matter what happens.
You do whatever it takes for as long as it takes, no matter what. You just don't give up and you do whatever you need to do. You will get there. It's impossible not to get there.
She then started her online retail store way ahead of her time, came to the conclusion that if she really wanted to change the face of the makeup industry, she would have to launch her own label.
I've always maintained the concept, the principles of I just want people to feel good about what they're putting on their face. And so what I've done with the product is made it.
If you could go back in time, you saw the younger Emma, if you can say one thing to her, what would that be? Emma Peters of Aleph Beauty, I am so excited to welcome you here.
Dear Diary, I've just finished a day with my business group, and after being scrutinized by the rest of the group, have been told by our business mentor to put a bullet in the business. This was so hard to hear, and I might have had a little bit of a tanty on the spot. I might have thrown my laptop across the room, but I do know that this is for a good reason, and there will be the next steps ahead. So time to suck it up and move on.
Welcome to the Powerhouse Diaries, the podcast for and by brave, bold, and badass business owners. If you're an entrepreneur who has outgrown those cookie-cutter business strategies and hashtag girl boss cliches, you're in the right place. Because let's face it, entrepreneurship is at least equal parts messy buns and runny mascara as it is the highlight reel we see online. So let's get real. Real about what it really takes to build and run a quote-unquote successful business, blood, sweat, and margaritas included. I'm your host, Yaela, your rebellious entrepreneurial fairy godmother, and join me as I sit down with rockstar female founders for the most juicy, deep, and meaningfuls around success, life, and everything in between. Now it's time for you to step into your powerhouse era. Oh my God, Emma, welcome to the Powerhouse Diaries, and thank you for bearing with me. For you guys, I was I was saying to Emma just before, it's one thing, careful what you wish for, you might just get it. We have interviews here about the real stories behind entrepreneurship, and literally everything that could go wrong this morning went wrong. So we're slightly delayed.
We're
here. We made it.
What a beautiful space.
I know, it's so wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. I am beyond excited to have you here and dive into your story, the story of Aleph, which is... let's start at the beginning, because I know you were working as a makeup artist and you were doing, quite successful, very well for yourself. And there was this moment where you were like, I can't do this anymore. What happened?
Oh, which moment was that? Yes. So many years, decades as a freelance makeup artist. So always loved working for myself, but I think I had tricked myself into working for myself, so much freedom, and always the chance to work harder, earn more. And
that old chestnut.
And so, there was a little bit of a progression. Different things happened, but really, I'm really passionate about health and well-being and wellness. And I mean, business has been in me.
Yes,
and it's only retrospectively looking back, I go, where did it actually start? Oh, well, I've always really idolized business owners, and really aspired to own a business. Had no idea why. Why would I want to own a business? I don't know, but
do you know now? Because
I do know
because
now.
I still sometimes ask myself, why do I do this again?
I mean, there's always the question of, you'd have to be crazy, right?
Yes.
But anyway, so over time, health, wellness. I did a bit of yoga study. I really love yoga, and I was voted in my yoga class. I was voted most likely to open a studio immediately after getting home. But so I did. I juggled with what's my thing, what's my business, and I was on the cusp of do I open a yoga studio, or do I go full blast into makeup, which is what I have breathed for so long anyway.
Yeah, but it's an industry you were working on, and but you had a different vision, because there was a lot in that industry that wasn't quite aligning with your values, I believe.
Well, that's right. I mean, I'd be sitting there with my models or actors in the chair, telling them what to eat, what not to eat, how to move, what sort of yoga to do, what sort of breath work to do. And this is going back, 20 something years. And then it did come to a point where I was telling them this, but yet I was plastering their face full of toxic, questionable chemicals. And then it became really obvious when I was pregnant with my first daughter.
Yes.
And I was working on a TV series where I was creating a lot of special effects looks, and I hired an extractor fan for my makeup trailer. So I was like, hang on a minute.
So that's how toxic those products really are. And that we're putting on our skin, which is, I believe, our largest organ, and like absorbs anything within like 60 seconds. And you were pregnant.
And I was pregnant.
And
so
needed
I
an extraction
had to
fan.
get an extractor fan just to make sure that no fumes kind of got my way.
Oh my God.
And then I started to research chemicals within the makeup. What is in here? And I mean, I know all about food and label reading from the nutritional side of things, and I started to really dive deep into label reading for cosmetic chemicals. And way back then, there was clean beauty wasn't a thing. I started to find little bits and pieces of natural skincare, because that's what I wanted as being pregnant. And as I looked into it further and further, it became more and more obvious as to what I needed to do. So I started off by compiling an online retail store, which went through quite a few different iterations. Actually, before that, I started off by launching an online makeup course, which was well before the online space.
I feel like that's a trend that I'm hearing in your story overall. Like, you say yoga and breath work, and this was 20 odd years ago. Like, I feel like you're kind of, as a lot of visionaries are, quite ahead of your time. And that has benefits, because you see things that aren't quite as normalized there. So there's great opportunity. But I can imagine it also comes with a lot of pushback.
Too early.
Exactly.
Too early. I mean, my husband and I, we work together. We both co-owned and co-founded Aleph, and he is the digital genius behind what we do. And from the early days, brand new baby, newborn, she'd be asleep napping. We'd be filming in the bathroom. He'd light it all up. We'd shoot some makeup tutorials. But this was before the digital
vlogging.
Space online. Yeah, it was before all that. So it was like, great, we have them. Now we have to figure out what to do with them. And there wasn't Instagram to post. There wasn't influencers or anything like that. So that was a little bit of a slower burn, that makeup course. But I quickly went, okay, well, now I'm teaching people how to do this. What am I going to get them to use? Because this is all shit.
And that's the thing, right? I feel like once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you've gotten this awareness of what is in these products, and feeling that it's not in alignment with your values, with who you are. You wouldn't put it on your face anymore. You don't want to, you want to protect your baby from it. So it's quite harmful. And then what, right? Like, how do you go from always having that entrepreneurial kind of calling, that nudge, but I have immense respect. I mean, I have immense respect for any female founder, because, well, we know what it takes, but especially for product-based and innovative product-based businesses, because it's not that you can just like, oh, I know this, I know how, I'm good at doing makeup or styling, and I'm just selling my knowledge. No, now you have to produce it. It's like research, it's scientific, it's packaging, it's logistics. Where do you start when you have this vision? Yeah,
that's a good question. And back then, it really was, where do I start? Because New Zealand is New Zealand. And at that point in time, I mean, the reason it probably took me so long to get to launch my own brand, because as I said, I had my retail store, so I was curating different products from different brands and bringing them into one. So I had things to use on my clients and models and actors. And one big long where was I going with that?
No, so let's...
Where do I start?
So where do you start with that?
There wasn't a place in New Zealand to produce color cosmetics. It just wasn't done. It wasn't a thing. Nobody did it. And I couldn't afford to fly overseas and spend multiple amounts of weeks and months researching where to get products made and make them. And I wanted to make them in New Zealand because we are in New Zealand, and I needed to be hands-on. And that's really, I mean, it's easy enough for anyone. Anyone can really go, oh, I want to launch a makeup brand. Yeah. Let's dial up from a catalog. Let's have this color, and I'll
change
put my
the
name
label.
I'll put my name on it, and that does not resonate with me. Never has, because I really want to. I want to know that what I'm putting on my face and on my body is what I want to put on, not what somebody else says. Well, this is the base formulation. This is what happens.
This is just what we do.
Go. This is what you do. This is the way things are done. Oh, I hate that.
That is one of my biggest pet peeves.
This is the way it's always been done. So therefore, this is the way you should do it.
Oh, stop! Kill me now.
Yeah.
The computer says no.
But one of the moments, which I mean, you've asked me in the past about what's a moment. One of the moments was I decided to do it, and I was like, well, how am I gonna do this? Because there's nobody who does it. So I literally went, find me the people I need to make this happen. And within hours, I was on the phone to someone who directed me to they said, oh, you should go to the NZSCC conference on Monday in Wanaka. I was like, Google, what is NZSCC? It's the New Zealand Society of Cosmetic Chemists, which they were having a conference 2 days later. I was on the plane. I was down there. I met the most amazing people, all of them I work with now. And it was such a great time. It was just a really good way to be introduced into the manufacturing and formulating industry. Found the people that I needed to bring into my world to help me create the product that I wanted.
Oh, and how amazing that when you put something out there that is really, I believe it's about, it has to be just a like heart-led vision. Yeah. And you put it out there and you're like, help me. I mean, whoever, the big spaghetti monster, somebody help me. Yeah. Like this is just too, manifestation, love, you can call it whatever you want, call it prayer, doesn't matter. 2 days later.
It's real. Like the synchronicities were insane. I mean, I had someone call me up and say, oh, I saw your name on the list, and aren't you a friend of so-and-so's? And I was like, yeah. And she said, well, I live down the road from you. Shall we share a cab to the airport? And then the next day, tap on my shoulder at my daughter's kindergarten. And it was this same girl went, actually, our kids go to school together. It's like mind-blowing. So everything just sort of tied up,
but you also dare to follow those nudges. I think there's a lot of people that first of all don't even get to that stage because you kind of mentally override it and you get stuck in a too hard bucket of it all. But then also when those synchronicities show up, when someone is like, oh, you should really go to this conference in 2 days in the South Island. For a lot of people, their rational brain will kick in, their ego, trying to keep them safe where they are, and be like, oh, I can't, I have 2 young girls at home, and this, and all the reasons why you can't, why you need to stay exactly where you are. But you also, met this opportunity halfway and just leaned in, and I think that's
leaning in. That's a biggie. Hey? You just lean in and go for it.
Yes. Oh my God. So you started initially, you had the retail, and then you're like, okay, I actually want to create my own business. You were telling me earlier, and I really love this story because if, your story, my story, every female founder I speak to, one of the key points is pivoting. Yeah. And pivoting often, and not holding on to a quote unquote mistake because you spent a long time making it. And I know you've had a really profound moment like that. Yeah. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. That was the pivot. So going from the online retail store to what Aleph is now, that little moment in between, happened when my husband and I were over in Australia. We used to do this for, this is what we enjoy doing together, business stuff. And so we joined a group over in Australia that we went over every quarter and got together with a group of other business owners.
Yeah.
And
sounds like so much fun.
We loved it. It took a lot of resource to leave the kids with, friends and family and every quarter, which it was amazing. We're so lucky we were able to do that. And it was our turn in the hot seat. So we went through, different turns of different businesses being analyzed by everyone else, and numbers up on the screen, and everybody was giving their, 2 cents of, well, this isn't working. Your bottom line, your margins, everything. You're not going to get to where you wanted to be.
Did you have a bit of like a underbelly feeling, or was that really hitting you? You're like, what do you mean?
We were pushing hard for years, going, right, how are we going to crack this? How are we going to get to the next level? What do we need to do to crack this as a retail store? And it was plain, we got. This is a good opportunity to zoom out and get others' perspectives, because you're in it packing orders till 10 o'clock at night. At that time, had my 3-year-old packing orders late into the night as well.
Oh my God.
She loved it. She still remembers it now. But as well as freelancing all day during the day, it was a lot. It was a lot.
Oh God, yes.
And still having to freelance because the retail store was, it was a struggle. So
and have little kids at home and do this with your husband. I mean, I can imagine it's quite all encompassing.
It definitely was. I don't have many friends.
I want to be your friend.
But yeah, having the ability to get others to help zoom out. But anyway, I was sitting in the hot seat, being analyzed, and was told by our business mentor. He literally said, "You're gonna have to put a bullet in it."
Oh God! Stab me in the heart. Wow!
So I'll never forget those words.
It's not very ambiguous. Doesn't leave much room for. What did he mean?
And well, look, just to exactly, it was put a bullet in it. But in that moment, I do remember. I think I burst into tears, probably swore quite a bit, and I did chuck my computer across the room. I love that. I had to tell you, what? I can't do that. I've worked so hard on it. Yes. But when I composed myself and
picked the computer up,
picked it up, it was still okay. It still worked, which was good, because then the next couple of days I got on, went, okay, what do I need to do to make this mine? And as a group, we started to talk through, what it would look like if it was my own brand. And I mean, I always knew I had it in me anyway. It's just I didn't really know or think that, who was I to be able to have my own brand?
And that's it. That's it. That's why a lot of us hide behind. It can be a job. It can be freelancing and doing something that isn't quite right. It can be anything. But there is that underlying belief of like, who am I to do this? And I think the person you become, or you have to become in the process of, growing a business to the level that you have, but also the versions of you you've had to say goodbye to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But I guess as well as that moment, there was another pivotal moment, I think, that came just after. And it was, again, it's like the universe just lining things up in front of me. I read a book. Well, when I say read, listen to, because I don't have time to actually sit still whilst I was doing all of my other things. And I think I was moving house at the time. So this was a nice kind of clean break. I was listening to an audiobook that is called The Success Principles, and it was do you know the one?
Yes, I do.
Jack Canfield, he's amazing. I used to love the Chicken Soup for the Soul back in the 90s.
But it's also like a staple, like it doesn't date.
Yeah, and I was listening to it, and it was talking about successful people and successful businesses and what they, just basically about them and their stories. And then I was like, that's me. I do that anyway. So I started to form this picture of like, well, what have I been thinking of myself? Because this is what I do anyway. This is just, I just do this. I'm tenacious. I'm a bit stubborn. I am passionate. And
throw laptops.
I throw, exactly. It's passionate. So I do this anyway. So that was that moment, and it was probably a week long because I got an extended version that took about 40 hours to listen to.
Wow.
But that was a pivotal point. That was like, all right, I can do this. Let's go.
I love that so much.
Yeah. So those are the moments.
What a story. But then there you were. Okay, so you've had your epiphany. You've seen the light. You're like, holy fuck, actually, I remember who the fuck I am. Let's do this. You have had the mastermind with the people kind of guiding you, mentoring you, brainstorming on how you could put this together. The universe has put all the right people in your way, so you can lean on their experience as well. You're in this with your husband. You have 2 little girls at home. I just potentially projecting my own experience, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I founded my agency kind of in that same phase. I perfected the art of like pushing the stroller with the foot whilst typing emails, or like I remember sitting in business meetings, and at the time it was often with like big spirit brands, just after giving birth to my youngest, and sitting there and thinking like, oh my God, I need to go home soon because I need to feed my child, or they're going to explode. So it's a lot of balls to have in the air. How did you manage? I almost want to say, how did you survive? Because where were you in all of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Me, I really only feel like I'm at a point in time now, and we're coming up. It's coming up 6.5 years since we launched the brand, so a good 7.5 years since really diving deep into bringing it together. I feel like I'm only starting to come out the other end now. And I mean, my kids are getting older, you know, they're now 11 and 16, whereas before they were whatever 11, 16 minus 8.5 is. They were little, and so it's now starting to become easier to slice in that time for myself.
Yes. And how, I mean, this is maybe a bit of a personal question, but after being in the trenches for so long, and you know, your business is like a baby, your actual babies, your husband, you have, you know, your there's so many other I guess priorities, which is not necessarily how it should be, but often how we are raised and believe that we should put everything first. And now that you're having a bit of that time and space to just be with yourself, how do you know what to do with yourself? You haven't been with yourself.
It's all the things that I have been wanting to do. And I mean, when I say all the things, it's not a lot. It's going to Pilates twice a week. You know, I hadn't been able to build that in before, but now I can at, 6:30 in the morning, because the kids are self-sufficient enough to get themselves up and dressed and make lunch. It's just it's the timing really with the kids, and
it's the seasons of your life. It's the seasons of your business. And I think there is something to be said for certain times requiring certain levels of focus and time. But is there any moment where you look back at all you've had to, or all you've chosen to sacrifice in these years to get to this point, and ask yourself, does this make sense? Is this what I
mean, yes, there's a lot of sacrifice. We've sacrificed weekends forever. We've sacrificed family holidays forever. I've sacrificed going out with girlfriends. Even this last weekend, it's still happening. I missed a friend's 50th, which I was due to go to, and because of some major work things that hadn't allowed me to go. Which and it is what it is, and you do have to sacrifice, because our priority is growing the business so that we then have a lifestyle that we can build these things back into.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's possible, and the kids will thank us when we can eventually take a proper holiday.
Yes,
It's
exactly. So your priority, you say, is growing the business, right? Is there a point where you're like, and this is where I'm going, or is it an ever moving goalpost?
It's ever moving. I mean, it's evolving.
Yeah.
I think it would be pretty boring if there was a start point and a finish point.
Oh yeah.
And you knew exactly what was going to happen, and that's it. You go there.
True.
You know, we're in the same moment. I'm so blown away by where we've got to with this business,
Yeah.
and at the same time, I'm not surprised, because it's what I've put. You know, it's my heart and soul that I put into it. And yeah, so it's a bit of a funny one, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dichotomy, and you know, there's no one right way. You just know what the right way for you is, right? Now, I'm always curious, right? I believe that you can't really make mistakes. You can take detours, but in the end, you know, failing forward is a very effective mode of transportation. And we learn from everything we do. But I have this concept, which I call the most fabulous fuck up. And the most fabulous fuck up is a mistake, quote unquote mistake, that in the moment felt like, how am I going to move past this? This is the end of the world. Or it can even like be a belief or a certain way of being that at the time you were attaching a lot to. And then when that happened, actually in hindsight, you look back and you're like, actually it was a great thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's a fuck up or a mistake. It was more a point in time where my expectations of something about to happen, when it didn't happen, was a lot. And in hindsight, it was just a little blip in the business journey, and it's not the end of the world. So it was an amazing learning opportunity for me to go, you know what, I'm still here, I'm still intact, things are fine, and it's onwards and upwards from here. But at the time, it was a major felt like my, you know, everything was caving in, and it was all a bit too much.
Yeah.
And
so how do you manage in those moments when everything feels like it's caving in and crumbling, and you still need to be the mum, the boss, the wife, play all the parts? How do you keep it together?
Well, this is something I didn't know until the time. The single thing that I wanted to do when I felt that everything had piled up on top of me, I wanted to just grab my family and snuggle up tight. And that's what we did. And that made me feel safe. It made me feel validated, you know, and it also gave me the strength to go, all right, how do I fix this? What do I do next? And did a little bit of, did some immediate energetic safety stuff.
Yes.
And
just
then,
regulating, guys, central nerve, like just regulating your nervous system is everything.
Absolutely. And then that then gave me the next steps. And then it was like, okay, one foot in front of the other again. Here we go. And then, you know, that moment was such a blessing. I mean, it sounds, no, but
it's true.
It was like, it showed me that it's gonna be bumpy.
Yeah.
And you're gonna come out of it, and you'll probably come out of it stronger. And it's what happens. So.
Yeah. And what matters is right here, like regardless of what happens in the business. But I think what you just touched upon is such an important part that I think a lot of especially more like starting founders often miss. And if I look back at my entrepreneurial journey of 18 years now. I sure as hell didn't know that. But what you said is like, I did like the energetic work to just ground myself, to regulate. And from that point onwards, I could move powerfully and in integrity. And I think what we don't realize is when we are in fight or flight, whether there's an actual threat or just a perceived threat because we thought something was going to happen and it didn't, and we thought that's going to be the end of the world, we're in fight or flight, our rational thinking capacities go offline. That's just biologically factual. So we cannot access that part of our brain where we can just like, okay, right, one foot in front of the other. We're completely in survival. And without taking that moment, taking that beat to snuggle up with your family, to do whatever breathing exercises, to get into nature, whatever it is for you, to down-regulate and just kind of come back to yourself, you're moving like just in complete panic. So it's so important that you with your background and probably instinctually knew that. And I mean, if there's one business tip I can give anyone, it's like in those moments when you're that triggered, prioritize regulation.
Ground yourself in whatever way possible. Yeah, family or earthing or
all of the above.
Or, everything.
Yeah. I'm really interested as well because you clearly have it's a impact mission led, hard led business. In an industry that is traditionally quite top level, let's say. It's very competitive, very can be perceived as superficial. It can also be quite fast moving. As a mother of two girls, especially in the beauty industry, which traditionally kind of promotes lack, not enoughness.
Yes.
It promotes basically the selling of beauty products is based on the way you are, just not enough. You need to do something else. And as a woman, a mother of daughters, and a business owner in this industry, how do you navigate that?
Which bit?
All of it.
A mother of daughters who are constantly bombarded with the latest trends and beauty trends, and I've got an 11-year-old girl, so how do I navigate that? Well, I'm creating products for as much for them as I am for me and for everyone I know, but what we've always placed the utmost importance on is just helping people feel like the very best version of themselves, instead of having a mask painted onto their face. And we do that in so many, from my perspective anyway, I aim to do that in so many ways. It's by helping them know that they've made the best choices for themselves, for the planet, for their hormonal systems, getting rid of any ingredients that are potentially hormone disrupting. So for my girls, that's super important. It's important as you're growing a teenager. It's important as you go through the
perimenopause, menopause,
and child bearing. Everything.
It's just always important
for everyone to not throw ingredients in there that are going to disrupt your hormonal systems, causing chaos, which will then affect your whole well-being. So there's that, there's the packaging as well. I got so sick of being marketed way back, this is in the beginning where, yay, we're cruelty-free. Here's a cruelty-free brand. And that's when cruelty-free started to become a thing. And you'd read the back of the package and it's like, that's so toxic to humans. How is that cruelty-free? It's, maybe not tested on animals, but it is compromising human health.
Wow.
Or organic. This whole range is organic, yet it's all housed in plastic packaging. So quite likely the plastic is leaching into the product.
Oh, God.
Then there is no way you can ever get into the product to clean it out, to then recycle it. Even if the packaging is recyclable, it's not going to happen because you can't get in there. You can't clean it out. You put it in the curbside recycling. It's too small to get in there into recycling anyway. Goes into the landfill, polluting the earth. What was the point of making it organic in the first place?
Oh,
it's
God.
So it was just mind blowing. All these, we're just going to focus on one thing. And so that's what I wanted to do, and it makes things super hard when you're trying to focus on people, planet, and animals. I mean, there are so many things that I could have done had I been using plastic. Plastic's easy. It's cheap. It's easy. We steer clear of plastic wherever possible and go for aluminum and glass. That is very limiting.
Yes.
It's very limiting. But, you know, that's just what's important, because I know that glass is recyclable if it's done the right way. Again, it's not recyclable in your curbside. So we've set up a whole system. Anyway, it's a whole other segue story, but setting up our own system to collect everything back so that we can physically take it to the glass people so that they can physically do it instead of just relying on the curbside.
The level of excellence and the level of depth is something that you don't see very often.
Because it's hard.
Yes.
It's expensive.
It's hard and it's expensive, and it's but it's so important. But in a world where health and wellness and just doing good for, like, from a holistic point of view, is, from the sound of it, it's part of who you are. You know, you seem like a very not just passionate, but very aligned, know what feels right and what's true for you and not person, and not willing to make compromises along the way, no matter the cost.
Yeah.
In an industry where that level of awareness, not a lot of consumers have that. Like I'd like to think that I'm fairly conscious and aware and try to do my part in the world. Only literally a couple of weeks ago learned about the impact of, for example, perfumes and makeup on your hormonal balance and just ecosystem. And there's not enough awareness on the importance and the impact it has. How do you also, whilst you're doing the hard thing of producing everything the right way and upholding this level of excellence, I can imagine there's also a level of educating the consumer or the potential consumer, because there's not that much knowledge out there. And I'm pretty sure, I can imagine that knowledge is also not very readily pushed, because that would really get in the way of a lot of big corporations.
Right. But there is a whole lot of greenwashing out there too.
Yes.
So it's really hard for the customer to navigate what is greenwashing and what is a load of bullshit, what is actually real. So I've always maintained the concept, the principles of, I just want people to feel good about what they're putting on their face. And so we've done that first and foremost by makeup that actually works, that people can wear, and we get this all the time. They get comments on their skin. They get people saying, "You look rested. Have you been on holiday?" Or you're glowing. All these amazing comments that are not like, "Oh, I like your
I like your lipstick
eye makeup today." It's not that. It's comments on them. And so what I've done with the product is made it so that people want to wear it. And then once they start using it, then they come into the Aleph ecosystem, and then they start to learn about the products. I'm not trying to push, "Oh, this is what's wrong with the industry. This is what's wrong with the product you're wearing," because that's doing the very thing, making something wrong.
Yeah, and fear-mongering.
And so therefore they've got to change it. I just want to produce products that people enjoy wearing. And they soon come to realize that they're wearing a makeup product, which is makeup in the moment, but I've also packed everything full of ingredients that will do that very job over time. So you're getting the benefit of makeup in the moment, but you're getting that same benefit for your skin for real over time. The more you wear it.
Sold.
So what I wanted to do is reverse that spiral, because usually makeup put on the skin compromises the health of the skin. Skin gets worse, more makeup, and downward spiral.
Yes.
I want to reverse that. So you put your makeup on, your skin gets better.
You want to put yourself out of business.
Then you need less makeup. Then you can get to choose your makeup that you want to wear. You're not doing it just to cover the ills of what your last makeup job. You know what I mean? So it's really skincare infused makeup. And I mean, I do get a little bit excited about ingredients. But I love it. But what really lights me up is the mitochondrial function of the cells. And so getting in there and finding ingredients. They're all plant-based. They're all plant-based ingredients that help to increase the mitochondrial function of the cells in the skin.
Just for us mortals, I'm not even going to attempt to say it, but what exactly is the
mitochondrial function?
Thank you.
The mitochondria is the energy powerhouse of the cell. And so
yes.
it's helping to increase cellular metabolism. So the way I look at it is you can choose. Okay, you can choose how you age. And I like to call this proactive aging, not anti-aging, because...
Yes, proactive aging. Can we just change it proved?
Well, yeah, because for years it's been, anti-aging this, anti-aging that. It's like, well, we are all aging. We're not going to pretend we're not.
And also, thank God, you know?
But then they tried to coin, it's pro-aging. Really?
What?
Really? So you want to actually...
Yeah.
But you can choose to proactively age. So it's like what we put into our bodies and what we do. You've heard the story about twins that have been
the epigenetics,
and one goes all shriveled and the other's healthy and full of vitality. So if you choose what you put on your skin, you can choose to age in the right direction instead of not. And so that's,
and it's like the right direction. It's also a sense of empowerment.
That's right.
Because you're not just at the mercy of your circumstances.
And it's not for anyone else either. It's making you feel like the best version of yourself. And there's a little bit of a funny stigma with makeup because it's like a superficial cover-up thing. But would you say that for clothing?
No, exactly.
I mean,
you're just covering up with your clothes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We choose what we wear. We mindfully choose the outfits that we want to wear so that we can feel our very best and present ourselves in the best way. It's an extension of that. And then you've got the skincare benefits on top of that, which is doing your skincare for real.
I have one question, and then I want to do something fun, do a little rapid fire question game. But I am very curious. If you could go back in time and you saw the younger Emma, like maybe even at that pivotal moment, right before she threw her laptop or right after, somewhere around that time, and you could tap her on the shoulder and whisper one thing, just one thing in her ear. What do you wish she knew? And maybe by extension, what a lot of female founders that may be in a position where they've built something, but it's not quite working, and they're at this crossroads, right? Like throw my laptop and change course, or throw my laptop and fold. What is one, if you can say one thing to her, what would that be?
I think the reassurance that everything that has happened up until that moment is leading to something. So it's not stopping at that moment. And kind of being able to project yourself forward 5-10 years and know that everything that will happen between that moment and that 5-10 years from now is also building up towards that. So just keep on track, but pivot when you need to, because that's what it's all about. I mean, we have a bit of a mantra, and I instill this into my kids, and they're like, "No, Mom, not again! Don't tell me this." But my mantra is, you do whatever it takes, for as long as it takes, no matter what. As long as it's legal and kind.
That's a good little subtitle.
Caveat, because it could go wrong otherwise. But that is how you get to where you want to be. You just don't give up, and you do whatever you need to do, in the realm of kindness and the law,
the realm of the jurisdiction.
And then you will get there. You will get there. It's impossible not to get there.
Yeah. I love that, because for me it touches on the two most important parts, kind of almost this balance, the yin and the yang of entrepreneurship for me. On the one hand, on the just like keep moving, taking aligned, committed action towards in the direction, even if it's a vague direction of your goal, but also it speaks to trust. Trust that you may not be able to see the entire staircase. Doesn't mean you don't take the next step. And you will eventually end up somewhere where you want to be, or maybe even it'll look very different from what you pictured.
But maybe at that moment you will think, oh, is this it? And this is not where I want to be. But, you know, that's just a little stepping stone and you will learn from it. Move on.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. If you were... Just imagine that, you know, you're the 100-year-old version of you, you know, by that time, very intentionally, proactively aged to the perfect age of 100, looks back at you now. What advice do you think she would be giving you now?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, make every moment count. Yes. I think make every moment count and enjoy every moment. I think that's definitely a key, and I do feel very grateful that, you know, I'm at a point where our business is growing at such an amazing rate that I can focus on the creativity of it all instead of the contraction. Is this going to work? Is it going to work? You know, so I am very grateful for that, because that it just takes a huge weight off to be able to go, okay, what can I create next? Where can we go from here? It's a lot more open than the initial stages in business. And when I say initial stages, like if I add up the online store plus the starting of the brand, you know, it's a good decade of initial stages of business where you're fighting for every dollar, every second, every moment of the journey, and then being able to turn and also not taking it for granted, because you never know, things change so rapidly. Look at, you know, COVID and things, unprecedented stuff like that, but just being in every moment, enjoying every moment, and enjoying the creativity of every moment is, I think, is important.
That's a little mic drop moment. Before we wrap it up, we often flip the script at the end. Do you have any questions you wanted to ask me?
I would like to know what your biggest fuck up moment was. Put you through that torture.
Okay, it's getting hot in here, guys. It was... If I think about it now, it was so ridiculous. And I think that's why that question, because it was so dumb. But it was when I had my agency and it was growing. So my agency I accidentally started it, and I was doing it by myself, and then a trainee. And then it grew very rapidly, and I was very young, and I think it was in between both my kids. I think I was 25, and within the first year went from, I might leave my corporate job to, I think I had 6 staff, and I was so young, and 2 babies, and also no idea what I was doing. I didn't come from the agency background, which in hindsight was probably one of our strengths, because we weren't limited by, you know, like you say, this is just how we do it. I was like, this does not make sense. But we grew really rapidly, and in that, I really had a love-hate relationship. No, that's not true. I had a hate relationship with my numbers and the finance and the accounting, which is ridiculous because we're running a business, not a hobby. So I kind of outsourced that and played dumb. I didn't kind of dive into it. So whenever we needed to make big investments, I would just go to my financial guy, who was also just kind of running and trying to keep up and figuring this out, and say, hey, this is an investment I'm looking to make. Is that, you know, feasible? And he'd say yes or no, based on, you know, what the computer said. And we'd go. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a misunderstanding about what was like revenue or like profit and what was cost of goods sold. At the moment, at that time, we did a very big project where the majority of what was coming in was going straight out again. But he'd advised, you know, said yes, or based on what was coming in. But that went on for about 10 months until one day he had to knock on my office door and say, hey, we're basically bankrupt. Wow. And I bootstrapped that business. I had no investors, no loans. I every cent that was in there was earned first. So I was always kind of trying to keep up. Married, young kids. I think my ex-husband was still studying. I think he was doing his PhD. Like there was no... And I remember that moment. We had 6 people. I had to fire 5 of them on the spot, and I felt terrible. The one that I could keep on, I remember having a conversation with her and saying, hey, if there was ever a time you believed in my vision, this would be a really good time to remember that, because we're going to have to do the work of 6 people with the 2 of us whilst I bring on new business. And I remember having a conversation with my husband at the time and saying, I know it sounds ridiculous because we're on the verge of bankruptcy, but I can feel it. Like we're going to get there. I think this was December. And I said, give me till the 1st of April. And if at the 1st of April, we're not like net positive and like it's looking up, I promise you, without emotion, I will close the door behind me, because I can't do this to my family. But give me 3 months, because I can feel it. We're so close. And for some reason he trusted, well, I mean, there was not really another option. And by the time April 1st came along, I think we had 4 people already back on the payroll, but yeah, that was a pretty big fuck up. And it taught me to get amongst it. And I YouTube university'd myself, like all the numbers. And since then, I'm an absolute geek with it. I love it. I love my forecasting.
Spreadsheets.
I know.
Spreadsheets. I know. I mean, that is the biggest thing. Know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers. And I mean, that's where I was when I had my laptop throwing moment is I did know, I thought I knew my numbers, but I didn't know them intimately enough to know that they actually weren't going to increase the way I wanted them to with what I was doing. So it's so important to know your numbers and not hand it off to someone else. Yeah, absolutely. If you don't know your numbers, you're not running a business. You have a hobby and potentially a very expensive one. Dangerous, yeah.
Oh, Emma, thank you so much. Guys, as per usual, all Emma's details will be in the show notes. Go stalk her, go find Aleph, go check out, get all the makeup brands. I know that I'm now wanting a whole like a do-over of my makeup now that I'm aware of what's actually in it. I'm like,
Yes, well, we can help with that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. This was so much fun.